We're here on a wonderfully autumnal day in northeast Lincolnshire at the Business Hive in the fantastic town of Grimsby. And I would like to welcome Rick Smith to the Insight for Business podcast show. Thank you for joining us, Rick.
You're more than welcome.
As a little icebreaker, can you please tell me what was the very first job you did that you got paid for?
It was, I worked in a shooting school. Not that we shot anybody, but it was more about, I was paid 20 pence a week to go and collect clay pigeons that have been shot. So all the pieces were in the farmer's field. And I had a bucket with me that we had to go and collect all these clay pigeons. Thinking back then, there was a guy called Bill. He was in his 80s at that time, and I was a young lad. And he had his pipe, he had his metal bucket, he had his walking stick, and he was better than me. And it's like, wow, I've got to step up here somewhere. And so
20 pence a week.
20 pence a week, mate. Yeah, those are the days.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well done. So, one key point that I've learned about business rescue and recovery is that engaging early on can be of critical importance. Can you expand on just what sort of difference this can make to a business by starting a conversation early in the process? And are there any warning signals businesses should look out for?
Yeah, the problem we come across is that people are battling every day. They're fighting within their businesses, and once they come across a problem, they apply the same approach to sort of fight it or to deal with it, should I say? And they don't sort of look to get outside assistance or get support within that, unless it clearly falls within a line of a specific service they can get assistance with. So you tend to then find people will tend to battle with this for some time, and it will build up and it will build up, and it gets to the point where they then have to get some assistance because it's outside their capability, their remit to be able to deal with it.
What's happened? Do they see that they need it? Does it build up to that point?
That's that point where, if you've got a letter for winding up petition being served upon you, if you've got a High Court enforcement officer going to attend your premises, things of this nature, that it's that point of them understanding when do I need help, and unfortunately they see it too late, really, and therefore the tools that we have, there's limited amount of tools we can therefore apply, and a lot of our energy initially is to, when we first go into a company, it's more about what's our predatory threat, what is our main problem here, and then how long have we got to sort of deal with that main problem. So it's really back to the owners sort of understanding that they need some assistance here. But I'm hopeful that due to the pandemic, they are their worlds, I suppose, have changed in how they're operating. They're having to now diversify more. They're having to look at it from a different perspective. Yeah. And the hope, therefore, is that they then look to take advice from advisors who can plug those gaps for them and give them that sort of, I suppose, non-blinkered approach to their operations. Because the other thing we find is they get stuck into their business and we call it blinkered, and they don't see the business for what the business is. When you get somebody independent to it, it's not emotionally connected to it. Therefore, then you get a different perspective of that business coming from that person, and that's one of the important things that we can bring to them is that. And then the problem is then getting them to sort of, I suppose, embrace that, because we've always done it that way, which is the normal thing we come across. So getting in early is a good thing, but getting in earlier can also come with its problems in that they're not as accepting receptive to the actual problem that they've got. So it's where that line comes. Where
timing is everything.
Yeah, that's it. It's where that line is really. So sometimes we can battle to try and get them to sort of change direction because they don't consider that their problem is big enough for them to do so. Or the other end of the scope is, when the ICOT enforcement guys knock on the door, they're very open to taking your assistance and guidance. So,
That's a toughie. When we chatted the other week, that's the toughie, isn't it? You're not receptive. You don't know when. I just don't see any other way around improving that other than through education, through a bit of dialogue, through being able to broadcast the message of how you can help and just getting it out there in front of people. I suppose the thing for me is, as being part of a business network and a community, if we are discussing with other business owners and leaders, and I suppose it's a challenging one to ask, and admit to struggling, but maybe it's a conversation that I'm reminded of maybe the mental health conversation. It's something that, go back even a decade, people are a lot less likely to address. And it doesn't sound too dissimilar in that it's something that people keep to themselves and aren't willing to talk about. Maybe it's something that
it's social acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely from the mental health perspective, and we do get people within that, varying degrees of mental health issues due to the fact that the pressures of their business, their livelihood, is now in the focus, and it can cause those issues with those people. So I think the more you get it into the public focus as those type of things, the more people are, and I think it's getting better. We are adopting a different mindset now. There are very skillful people outside of their business that can give them assistance, and it's just for them to sort of reach out when they need to be reaching out. I mean, you reach out to your accountant once a year, or you should be doing more.
Yeah, this is something that I found it difficult to understand. I saw that the accountant would be one of your trusted advisors. That I expected this would be a conversation you would be having, but yeah, if your business that you're have such an emotional connection to is struggling, maybe you don't want to admit that there is a problem.
That's back to the mental health thing. I think it's awareness, isn't it? I think if we're now more open to this, I think that's a good thing, that people feel that they can talk to their accountant and say they're struggling. But that's your financial area. There's obviously a lot of other areas of your business that need looking at, or might need looking at. So it's but there are, say, people like that, or indeed you'll go to a solicitor if somebody's serving you with a stat demand of some description. So it's but it's, like I say, it's always a case when it seems to be the case more, or not as much now, I'm going to say, but people do reach out, but they need to reach out more.
That leads me on to another question that I'll throw in at you. Must be quite emotional under some circumstances then. Do you feel a responsibility to help your clients with this emotional side of the change that they're going through? It must be very prevalent.
Yeah, you have to do. I mean, they are the business end of the day. They are the ones that are making the decisions within the business, and it's therefore important to to build that relationship with them, and to try and work with them whilst they're in this emotional roller coaster, and be that sort of rock for them as they're going through it. Because it's not, you're not just going to come in and inject them in the arm and everything's going to be good. There is still going to be an emotional roller coaster, but the benefit is that there is somebody there to call upon, somebody to put your arm around their shoulder as such, and you can to deal with those problems with them.
I really did take that away from our conversation recently, that you're their rock. You come in and take a load of that pressure straight away. And that must be quite a release in being able.
They do. It's nice. They leave the meeting and they feel elevated. Yeah. The weight's off the shoulders. It's nice when they report that back. But we've seen it. We've done it. They haven't, and that's the difference, isn't it? For 30 years now, we've sort of experienced different different industries, different, lots of differences within these industries, how it can impact them. So we can bring that knowledge and skill set to the table. Therefore, we can give them the support because we know we're in the right position to do so. We've got that skill set to, put their mind at rest at certain areas of their concerns. And fear is a projection of the future. So, it's that, so they're projecting this on themselves that it's going to be as bad as what it is. And having or knowing that that's not going to be the case and there's a way we can deal with it is obviously a big relief for them. They're, like I say, this is their livelihood. It could be, they need to put food on the table for the kids. So,
Thank you. So furlough's ending right about now, today.
Yeah, it's your last day.
Yeah. Do you expect that some businesses may not have planned thoroughly enough for the impact of the wage bill increasing? Do you see a position that businesses can take based on performance relating to wages in the future, so that remuneration could be linked to business or individual performance perhaps? That's one way I thought people may be able to mitigate against making redundancies, for instance.
Yes, definitely. It's there will be some out there that haven't seen it or prepared for it, so it will obviously have a knock-on effect. There is a lot out there that that do need to raise capital or invest in their startup as such. These things have been mothballed now for quite some time. For example, take the restaurant industry. If they're going to start to open up, then they'll need to restock their stores and so forth. So there's that element to it. So and looking at how you mitigate your costings is a part of that. The government are not going to assist you anymore with that. So it's how you then work that within your operation. Maybe you don't need to be so much staff heavy. Maybe that's an alteration you can do. Maybe you can outsource a certain area of your business to cater for that. And it's asking all those questions around the business.
And is that what you would help business owners with when they come in? You're looking at that the whole range of influences and factors that can be controlled and improved within a business.
Yeah, we look at sort of 4 pillars of your operation, really, which from that we can then gather the relevant data to be able to run an analysis report. That enables us then to sort of get an understanding of this business, not only its financial side, but obviously its management side, its marketing side. All those areas of the business can be looked into. The information is gathered of its past, and we can look at its present, and then we can use that information to start looking towards the future. How we're going to, if in some instances, recover this from where it's currently in, to then grow this business moving forward.
You could do that at any point, can't you? You could effectively do that at any point. If you had a worry and a concern, that's a service which you offer, isn't it? To give it that appraisal of where the business is at, and
it's free. We can't make it any freer than free.
Pardon?
It's free. So wow. People can engage with us. There's a free consultation with them, and within that they'll get support and advice anyway. And then we're running a free business analysis report as well. So that's like a mini report that you get. And clients report back that it's the first time that they've actually been able to see their business. Yes, you can look at a balance sheet, you can look at the P&L, but to actually have a report that covers all those 4 key points.
Looking at the operation, more of the holistic business rather than just the financial numbers.
So you're going to get that. And within that, then you can see, okay, something is standing out for me or not, or I need to deal with that.
Brilliant. Free analysis report.
Yeah, so we can't be better than free.
Can't do better than free. It's start the conversation early.
That's why we did it. We want them to try, and we know that people want to get back to where they once were. So pre-pandemic, they was happy, they was comfortable, the business was doing okay, life was fine. And now it's changed, and some for the good. One of the companies I deal with has actually it's done very well for them due to the pandemic, but a lot of them haven't. So they want to get back to where they once were, and that's a way of going to market with a free offering to try and say, look, just engage and see if we can help you from there. It might be we can't, but what you got to lose.
I believe one of the one of the starting points that you'd like to get them to do is to increase that buffer they have of capital, maybe? I mean, just for that comfort, that can stop the headaches and the worry.
That was big. I didn't realise. I mean, I'd been pitching that for many years, and I hadn't realised how big. A lot of my clients came back to me when this pandemic hit, and because I'd been advising them to, the first steps we work towards is having a buffer within your bank account, 3 months of trading to be deposited, and then to one side of your current trading. So you've got a safety net just in case you need to use it. And it can be things like, the problem with HMRC is that, they lend you money in essence because you trade and then pay them back once it's good that can sometimes come and bite you because you've you've taken on more work, so your cash flow's been affected. So you've always got this little buffer that you can just tip in as long as you balance it off again when you're over that curve, and that's fine. And a lot of people come back to me after it and said that's a godsend, because the big thing for them was that they weren't panicking. There was no stress to this. They know they could trade on for 3 more months.
It improves your decision making, doesn't it? Not under that pressure.
Yeah. You're completely, you're not clouded with all this, and they could then absorb it better and make better decisions moving forward, which is, so something as small as that is a big.
But you're seeing that actionable, tangible results.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So temporary restrictions to winding up petitions were wider than originally envisaged as part of the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act 2020, which is known as SEGA. And they come to an end today, 30th of September. Can you give our listeners and wider audience a brief overview of what this means and the likely impacts?
Yeah, what the government's trying to do and have been from the office to try and get sort of, I suppose the right word for it is more like a mediation, try and get some dialogue between, those people, I'll keep it simple, those people you owe money to, and try and work together to try and overcome this pandemic. So therefore they introduced these sort of restrictions through the courts, and as you rightly said, they're coming to an end as of today. But what they've then done on the back of that, they've increased to £10,000 now to wind the company up. You've got to be owed more than £10,000. But they've also then put into place a 21-day stay, so that you have to then sort of prove that you have spoken. Both parties have been in dialogue, and there is no way forward. They've hit the loggerheads with this style, and I believe that's until March 22. I think they've got this in place, and yet again, it's back to the same: is trying to get people to work with one another to overcome, these difficult times which we've all experienced, be that as individuals, be that within business, and I think. What else can we use other than that? I think it's the right thing because of that, and it's how people work with it. It's what the outcome's going to be in time.
Yeah, working together. Imagine that.
That's it. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, the alternative. When we look at it, it's you've got to look at the commercial viability of your actions against the company. What have they got? If you're going to start spending your time and money trying to recover that monies, how are you? You've got to look at it from a recovery perspective. Is it a viable action you're going to partake in? And now, like I say, from the government perspective, they want you to have that sort of dialogue and explore all options and avenues before you start to use any form of enforcement, really. Yeah.
Super. Throughout the pandemic, there has been protection from COVID-related rental arrears, which has given more rights to the tenants. This is coming to an end soon. Do you foresee this causing issues? And what should tenants and lessees do to mitigate potential problems?
I think at the moment, if it's you can pursue so long as it's not amassed through the pandemic period. So a landlord, for example, if these arrears have been amassed outside of the window of the pandemic, then there's still avenues for them to pursue. But it's back to the same scenario again: is that it is working together from a landlord-tenant situation, and there is time to pay arrangements that can be put into place. And but my personal view is I think the landlords unfortunately have had a hard time out of this lot, and there should have been more. I think they've got liabilities, and so it's had a massive knock-on effect for them, depending obviously on the size and so forth. But it's not been dealt with, I don't feel, in from the landlord's perspective.
Thank you. On the back of the pandemic and with furlough ending, the change in winding up with the SEGA Act and rental arrears perhaps playing a part, all on top of lots of businesses and only just getting restarted. The year end is not far away, and lots of businesses close over this period where wages have to be paid and revenue is not being generated. This could be another potential shock for businesses. How could they manage this?
You really need to take the time out and look at your business. If you haven't done already, you do need to. I preach all the time, the balance between working on and working in your business, and it's important now even more so that you do take that time to work on it, and then start to work from. An easy one approach is to what's happened in the past. Where was our pre-pandemic? What was we doing? Look at it from that perspective, be that its financial side, and then start to look at the data throughout the pandemic. How's it impacted us? And the furloughs then ending, how's that going to impact us? So then you look at your current position and where are we currently at, and therefore where are we going to go, or where do we like to go, and then you can start to work on that. So it's really, I think it's time now. There's HMRC out there, I think is 80,000 winding up petitions they've got stacked up, ready to go through the system. There's all these sort of big things that are going to start to sort of come our way. Furloughs ended, and I don't see that the banks are, at the moment, the feedback I'm getting, the banks are pretty tight in their sort of offerings of borrowings and so forth, even to the point of some reported back even open a bank account in some of them, a business bank account. So to get external assistance to deal with this is, but knowing that, looking at your business, understanding it, looking at how you can drive your business forward. It might be you have to make quite a lot of changes because the model it was is nothing like what the model is going to be moving forward. Yeah. But taking the time to work on it is now. Really,
I think that's a great point. There's no point just all hands on deck throwing it in and just slogging it out, because it may come to a grinding halt. You do need to take the time to work on the business. Yeah, that makes good sense.
I mean, that's unfortunately that's the default setting most business owners have, is they fall back to this chipping away at the coalface, and it's not the right thing to be doing. Yes, you can go out there and work harder, but reality is the problems are still there. All you're really doing is kicking the same can down the street. You've got to be able to look at it from a holistic perspective. Like I've said earlier on, there's different techniques to that, but generally, if you start to cover off those areas within the 4 pillars of your business, or you can then start to see where you're currently at and where you need to be going moving forward.
Yeah, and another key point there was the data. If we have data, we can make good decisions, can't we? We know where we've been. Hopefully we can plan for where we want to be. And I do see that if you are looking at that, you can look at it as an opportunity. What am I going to do differently? How am I going to get my 3-month trading buffer in place? So you can look at it positively, but that takes working on rather than working in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have had to adapt already, haven't they? I mean, there's a lot of things, even down to fuel at the moment. People have had to adapt. We've had to diversify, adapt, be open-minded to change, which is a good thing. It's the right thing to be doing, although it's been forced upon a lot of businesses. But the one benefit, I suppose, is that what insolvency brings to the market is that you're the wheat from the chaff. You're sieving through that side. So maybe your your marketplace is a bigger market now because there isn't the competition that you used to have before. So it's looking at it from that perspective to see what how's it looking now for the future for you, and what you now need to do to capitalise upon it.
And again, this is what you help businesses with.
Yes,
Being able to look at
yes.
all of that.
And it's free.
Fantastic. What are the regional issues at play here, if any? I'm thinking of agricultural markets, which have previously depended on overseas labour, and how that dynamic is or has changed. In my area of work, we'd look at this as understanding your task environment and the dynamics at play. What can businesses do to understand these impacts and lower potential effects on themselves?
I think first off, just being aware of it, trying to understand what your industry is going through and will potentially be going through. So ears on the ground, what is actually happening is your first port of call. And then secondly, how is that going to impact you within your business? And then you're back to reassessing your situation. So knowing it, understanding it, gathering the information, and sometimes I must admit it is a bit of a crystal ball thing. But as we know in business, you're better off making a decision than not making that decision, albeit wrong or right. So yeah, it's. So
what I get from that at the start, you say awareness of your industry. That points again to working on your business. If you're just at the coalface all the time working in it, you're not necessarily going to see that. If you're not discussing with your peer group, networks even, I can see the importance of that to understand the relevancy of factors that may seem beyond your control, but if they're thrust upon you and you're unawares that they're going to be upon you, you can't. It's too late to understand what's going to happen. It's too late to maybe gather the information. You're on the back foot. You're making poorer decisions because of that.
And I think maybe, I'll be saddling everybody with the same brush here, but I think, we've had this COVID period, we've had the furlough, we've gone through it all, we've chillaxed, I suppose, is probably the word I'm looking for. And what we know the wheels of industry are starting to churn again. And what we should have done many months ago is to sort of, we should have done this really, I think, many months ago, to try and get people and listen to this to start to implement those changes within their business or look at their business in that way. But there's going to be those that haven't, and it might be difficult for them to allocate enough time to be able to work on their business. And that's always a challenge for anybody, but it's an important challenge that they undertake and do. But working more hours is not the right way of dealing with it. People think, okay, well, I'll work sort of 12-hour days and then I'll work at night time. Well, really, there's an optimal time in which you're best to focus on your business as an individual, and that is mainly mornings. So, because after lunch you've had your fill and you're tired and so forth. So it's really trying to pitch it at the right time, that you are in a good mindset to be able to, give it the proper thought that it requires. Yeah.
Thank you. Leaning on my experience managing large and complex supply chains, I've used PESO analysis many times. That of course stands for political, economic, sociological, technological, legal and environmental, which offers structure to understand the task environment in which an organisation operates and where risks are faced. Although this is different for each sector, I do see that the political responses we've seen throughout the pandemic have certainly supported businesses, but as this support comes to an end, how do you see the political factors influencing businesses as we move forwards? And is there one political intervention you would like to see amended, supported, or reintroduced perhaps?
Yeah, I think that there's, things like the Business Hive, places like this are a good, but the problem is they're not nationwide, but there is support for business owners. But what they could really do from a government perspective is to ramp that up when it comes to this, definitely more so now, about people getting, kickstarting their business again, getting back going again. There needs more support in that area. It's not just finances; it is the support. Back to what I was saying earlier on, it's there is more, I think, political clout needs given in that location for businesses. So that would be nice to see if there's any sort of. I've not heard anything around those sort of areas to try and help kickstart this economy. That's the approach that they're taking is to rebuild it in that way, and that's great. But just relying upon those that have run their businesses before to jump in the same seat and continue doing, it needs help.
Yeah, doing the same thing gets you the same outcomes, doesn't it?
And the landscape's changed. We're in a different remit now.
Yeah, again, support and networks coming into it again, into that the improvements. They don't just come out of thin air. They don't come by just working harder, just working longer hours. They come by taking a step back. And sometimes, as you do, when you come into a business, you're offering a fresh pair of eyes, a structured approach. It just seems that's a great point. That it makes good sense. Is there a key point you would like anyone listening or watching to take away and consider, which would stand them in good stead, so they can hopefully avoid insolvency?
You're not on your own. There is help out there. Yes, it's going to take some looking, but there is. There's Trustpilot on websites if you're using the web to try and identify a good company for assistance. There is word of mouth, which is always a good thing. Back to the mental health thing. Let's be a bit more open to our problems and discussions. And what we find when somebody has recommended somebody to us is that they're far more open. They're far more. There's no walls to sort of crash down first. They've got to that point where that trust is there, and things like Trustpilot are a good thing on any social, on a web presence, and so they help that individual get to that point. But reach out. Don't think you can do this on your own. Is the best thing. There is help and support out there. Yes, it's going to need looking for, but you can find it. And maybe it's just the accountant. Depends on the accountant you've got. Some are just their remit is just the year ends and so forth. But there might be some help you can glean from them. And like I say, there's a lot of information we do as Forbes Burton. We educate. We put a lot of educational information out there to try and help people along their journey with potential problems they encounter. And back to it again, I'm not trying to sales pitch ourselves here, but it's free. You can pick up the phone to us and have a conversation.
And get some advice.
Yeah. So there is things you can do. So to answer your question, get help, do something about it. Don't try and do it yourself because it may go wrong.
Rick, thank you very much for joining me on the Insight for Business podcast show.
Well, welcome, Joe. Thank you. Cheers.